"You picked the wrong truck tonight," the voice whispered through the hidden earpiece, so faint it almost dissolved into the hum of the engine. But Danielle Carter heard every word as clearly as the low rumble of her 18-wheeler idling under the flickering rest stop lights. The asphalt stretched wide and empty for nearly half a mile in every direction, broken only by a row of vending machines glowing pale blue and the distant hiss of a diesel pump. And for a moment, everything felt suspended, like the world was holding its breath just for her, until the red and blue lights cut through the dark and painted her windshield in sharp pulses that reflected in her eyes. She didn't move right away, her hands steady on the wheel, her breathing slow, controlled, trained, as if the uniform she wore was more than denim and dust, as if it were armor built from silence and patience. "Do not stop. You're being watched." The voice came again, tighter this time. But the cruiser had already angled in front of her rig, blocking the exit, and another rolled in behind, sealing the space like a closing door. Gravel crunched under heavy boots as Officer Ryan Cole approached, his silhouette tall and rigid against the flashing lights, one hand resting casually near his belt, the other tapping twice against the metal of her door before knocking. Firm and deliberate, the sound echoing louder than it should have in the still night air. Danielle blinked once, slow, measured, then reached up and cut the engine, the sudden quiet almost deafening as the vibration beneath her faded, leaving only the faint ticking of cooling metal and the distant chirp of insects. She opened the door halfway, just enough to look down at him without stepping out, her expression calm but unreadable, like she had already lived this moment 100 times before. "License and logbook," he said, his tone clipped, eyes scanning her face, her hands, the interior behind her as if searching for something he had already decided was there. Danielle nodded slightly, reaching for the folder beside her seat, every movement precise, unhurried, as if time itself bent around her instead of the other way around. Behind the officer, another figure moved toward the back of her trailer, flashlight beam cutting across the latch, pausing there for just a second too long. Danielle's jaw tightened, barely noticeable, her fingers brushing the inside of her jacket where cold metal rested against her ribs, hidden, silent, waiting. The radio crackled again, softer now, almost urgent. "If they open that trailer, the operation is compromised." And for the first time, the weight of 6 months undercover pressed against her chest like a second heartbeat. She stepped down from the cab slowly, boots hitting the pavement with a dull, grounded sound. And as she stood there between the lights, between authority and truth, she lifted her chin just enough to meet Officer Cole's eyes and asked, steady and clear, "Am I being detained or just followed?" Officer Ryan Cole did not answer her question right away, and that silence stretched longer than it should have, hanging between them like something unspoken, something already decided, his eyes narrowing just slightly, as if her calm unsettled him more than defiance ever could. And behind him the second officer circled toward the trailer again, his flashlight beam gliding along the metal seams, pausing, then moving, as if searching for permission rather than evidence. Danielle Carter stood, still under the pulsing lights, the red and blue reflections sliding across her jacket, her face, her hands, but none of it reached her eyes, which stayed focused, steady, watching everything without appearing to react. And when she handed over her license and logbook, her fingers did not tremble, not even when the voice in her earpiece came back, quieter now, almost buried beneath static. "We are tracking a second vehicle. Stay composed." And she inhaled once, slow and controlled, the cool night air filling her lungs with the faint scent of fuel and asphalt. "You been on this route long?" Cole asked finally, flipping open the logbook without really looking at it, his tone casual but edged, like he was testing something invisible. And Danielle gave a small nod. "Long enough to know this stop is not on your usual patrol pattern," she said, her voice even not confrontational, just precise, and that seemed to land, because his jaw tightened for a fraction of a second before he masked it again. A truck idled somewhere across the lot, its engine humming low, blending into the background like a heartbeat, and for a moment Danielle let her gaze drift past Cole's shoulder, just enough to catch the reflection of headlights in the chrome of a nearby rig, a vehicle sitting farther out than the rest. Engine off, lights dimmed, watching, and something in her chest shifted, not fear, not yet, just awareness sharpening into focus. Behind her, the metallic click of the trailer latch being tested echoed softly, and she turned her head just enough to see the second officer glance back at Cole, waiting, uncertain, and in that split second Danielle made a choice not with words, but with stillness, holding her ground, letting the silence speak louder than resistance ever could. The earpiece crackled again. Do not escalate. We are minutes out, and she felt the weight of that timing settle over everything, over every movement, every breath, every second that passed under those lights. And when she looked back at Cole, her voice came out low and steady. If you are going to search that trailer, I would like to know the reason. And the words were simple, but they carried something deeper, something that made him hesitate again, just for a moment, as if he could feel the edge of something he did not yet understand. The night seemed to tighten around them. The rest stop no longer empty but charged, like the air before a storm, and in the distance, far enough to be almost missed, the faint outline of another set of headlights shifted, moving just slightly, as if whoever had been watching was preparing for something to begin. The pause lingered just long enough to feel intentional, like Officer Ryan Cole was weighing more than just a routine decision, his fingers resting on the edge of the logbook without turning the page as his gaze flicked briefly toward the second officer at the trailer, then back to Danielle Carter. And something in his posture shifted, subtle but real, like a man beginning to question his own instincts without admitting it. The night air carried a low vibration now, not from her truck, but from something farther out, something approaching but still hidden beyond the curve of the highway. And Danielle caught it the way she caught everything, through stillness rather than motion, her senses tuned to the smallest changes in sound, in light, in rhythm. Reasonable suspicion, Cole said finally, but the words lacked weight, like they had been said out of habit rather than certainty, and Danielle held his gaze, not challenging, not yielding, just present, and that presence seemed to press against him more than any argument could have. Behind them, the second officer hesitated again at the latch, his flashlight beam wavering slightly as he glanced toward the far end of the lot, where that parked vehicle sat too still, too quiet, its dark windows reflecting nothing back. The earpiece crackled, sharper now. We have movement. Unknown vehicle preparing to exit. Do not lose visual. And Danielle's eyes shifted just a fraction, enough to confirm what she already knew. The car was rolling forward slowly, almost blending with the shadows, like it hoped no one would notice. Her pulse did not spike. It narrowed, focused, each second becoming clearer instead of faster, and she spoke again, her voice low, controlled. If you open that trailer, you are not just delaying me. You are interfering with something you do not see. And the phrasing landed differently. This time, not defensive, not vague, but precise in a way that made Cole's expression tighten, his attention splitting between her and the growing awareness that something beyond routine was unfolding. The distant headlights shifted again, now angling toward the exit lane, and the faint crunch of tires over gravel carried across the lot, soft but unmistakable, and Danielle's jaw set just enough to be felt. Not seen, sir? The second officer called out, uncertainty threading his voice as he stepped back from the trailer, the latch still closed, untouched, and for a moment everything aligned. The hesitation, the movement, the silence between commands that had not yet been given. Cole turned his head slightly, following the direction of Danielle's earlier glance, and when he saw the vehicle beginning to pull away, something clicked into place behind his eyes, not understanding, not yet, but recognition that the moment in front of him was not as simple as he had believed. The radio on his shoulder crackled with routine chatter that suddenly felt out of sync with the tension on the ground, and Danielle exhaled slowly, her breath steady as ever. Even as the situation shifted from controlled to fragile, the earpiece came alive. One more time, urgent now, no longer measured. Intercept window closing. You are the only one in position. And Danielle did not move. Not yet, because one wrong step would reveal everything too soon, and one more second of hesitation might let something important slip into the dark beyond the reach of those flashing lights. The moment stretched thinner, tighter, like a wire pulled to its limit, and Danielle Carter felt it in the air before anyone else reacted. The subtle shift as the vehicle at the edge of the lot began to roll faster now, no longer pretending to blend in, its headlights angling toward the exit ramp with quiet intention. Officer Ryan Cole followed the movement a second later, his body turning just enough to track it. And for the first time his certainty cracked, replaced by hesitation that showed in the way his hand hovered, unsure whether to continue the stop or redirect his focus. "Hold on," he muttered, more to himself than to anyone else. And that hesitation was all Danielle needed to confirm what her instincts had already locked onto. Her earpiece came alive again, sharper, urgent. "That vehicle is primary. You cannot let it leave." And the words settled into her chest like a command she had been waiting for. But the problem stood right in front of her, wearing a badge and holding authority that did not yet understand the stakes. She shifted her weight slightly, grounding herself, her boots pressing against the rough asphalt, the texture real and steady beneath her, anchoring her in the moment as she calculated the narrow space between action and exposure. Behind her, the second officer stepped, fully away from the trailer now, his attention also drawn to the moving car, his flashlight lowering as uncertainty replaced routine, and the latch remained untouched, forgotten in the face of something more immediate. Danielle's voice came low, controlled, carrying just enough to reach Cole without drawing attention beyond him. "If you let that car leave, you are going to miss what you were actually looking for." And the phrasing landed with a weight that made him look at her again, really look this time, as if trying to reconcile the calm precision in her tone with the assumption he had made just minutes ago. The vehicle at the far end picked up speed, tires rolling over gravel with a soft but accelerating rhythm, and the distance between it and the exit shrank with every second that passed. Cole's radio crackled with routine dispatch chatter that suddenly felt irrelevant, out of sync with the urgency building in front of him, and he hesitated again, caught between protocol and instinct, between the situation he thought he was controlling and the one unfolding beyond it. Danielle exhaled slowly, her breath steady even as the window of opportunity narrowed, and she made a decision not with force, but with clarity, stepping half a pace forward, just enough to shift his focus fully onto her as she said, quieter now, but sharper, "You are stopping the wrong vehicle." And something in the way she said it, not defensive, not pleading, but certain, cut through the noise around them. Cole's eyes flicked once more toward the departing car, then back to her. And in that brief exchange, something changed, not understanding, not yet, but doubt, real and undeniable. And the night seemed to hold that moment in suspension as the vehicle neared the edge of the lot, seconds away from disappearing into the dark highway beyond. The last few seconds before the vehicle reached the exit stretched into something heavy and irreversible, and Danielle Carter felt the balance tipping, not slowly but all at once, like a door about to close, and she knew that if it did, everything she had held together for months would vanish into the dark highway beyond those fading lights. Officer Ryan Cole shifted his stance, tension visible now in the way his shoulders tightened, his attention pulled between her words and the moving target at the edge of the lot. And for the first time his certainty gave way to conflict, real and immediate, as if the situation had slipped just outside his control. "Stay here," he said abruptly, though the command lacked conviction, already undermined by the way his gaze kept drifting back toward the departing car. And behind him, the second officer hesitated, waiting for direction that had not yet fully formed. Danielle did not move, but something in her presence sharpened, her focus narrowing until the rest of the world fell away, leaving only the line between that vehicle and the open road. Her earpiece crackled again, urgent and clear. "This is your window. If that vehicle clears the exit, we lose everything." And the weight of that statement settled into her bones, steady, undeniable. She took a single breath, slow and measured, then spoke, her voice cutting through the noise without rising. "You do not have time to second-guess this." And the words landed with a clarity that made Cole pause mid-step, his instincts pulling him in two directions at once. The vehicle reached the edge of the lot, its tires shifting from gravel to pavement, the sound, subtle but final, and the distance between it and freedom shrinking with every second. The rest stoplights flickered faintly overhead, casting uneven shadows that seemed to move with the tension, and somewhere in the background a distant truck engine roared to life, adding to the growing sense that everything was in motion except the decision that needed to be made. Cole's hand lifted toward his radio, then stopped, uncertainty freezing the gesture halfway, and Danielle saw it. That hesitation. That moment where authority faltered under pressure, and she stepped forward just enough to break it. Her voice lower now, but sharper, anchored in something he could not ignore. "If you stop me, you are letting them go." And for a split second the words hung between them. Undeniable, unavoidable. His eyes locked onto hers, searching for something. Doubt, fear, anything that would confirm his original assumption. But what he found instead was certainty, quiet and unshaken, and it unsettled him more than resistance ever could. Behind him, the second officer turned fully toward the exit now, watching the vehicle disappear into the dark stretch of highway, his posture tense, waiting, and the moment fractured, not cleanly, but in pieces, as Cole finally exhaled, the sound barely audible, and made a choice that came too late to feel like control and too early to feel like consequence. Danielle's earpiece went silent for half a beat, then returned with a single line, colder than before. "You are out of time." And the highway beyond the rest stop swallowed the last trace of headlights, leaving only the echo of what had just slipped through their reach. Silence settled over the rest stop, not the calm kind, but the kind that lingers after something important slips away, and Danielle Carter stood still in it, her eyes fixed on the empty stretch of highway where the headlights had disappeared, her breathing steady but heavier now, like she was holding something back instead of letting it move through her. The flashing red and blue lights continued to pulse against the pavement, against the side of her truck, against the faces of the officers who now stood without direction, their earlier certainty replaced by a quiet uncertainty that none of them acknowledged out loud. Officer Ryan Cole lowered his hand slowly from his radio, the unfinished motion lingering in his posture, and for a moment he did not look at Danielle, as if avoiding her gaze might delay whatever realization was beginning to form. The second officer shifted his weight near the back of the trailer, his flashlight now hanging loosely at his side, forgotten, the latch still untouched. The search never completed, and the absence of action felt louder than any command could have been. Danielle exhaled once, slow and controlled, her shoulders rising just slightly before settling again, and she reached up to the edge of her jacket, her fingers brushing against the fabric where something hidden rested beneath, not revealing it, not yet, but grounding herself in the presence of it. Her earpiece crackled again. Softer this time, the urgency replaced by something colder, more measured, status compromised. Secondary units adjusting. Hold position. And the words did not come with panic, only calculation, but Danielle felt the shift in them, the cost of what had just happened. She lowered her hand and looked back at Cole, her expression unchanged, calm, steady, but now carrying a weight that had not been there before, not anger, not accusation, just clarity. "That vehicle was not random," she said quietly, her voice cutting through the low hum of the night without force. And this time Cole did look at her, really look, his brow tightening as he replayed the last few minutes in his mind. Each hesitation, each decision, each second that had passed. The rest stop felt smaller now, like the space between them had narrowed, like the situation had closed in around a truth that had not yet been spoken. Somewhere in the distance, the faint sound of approaching engines began to build, low at first, then gradually more defined. Multiple vehicles moving with purpose, their presence not yet visible but undeniable in the way. The air carried their sound. Danielle turned her head slightly toward the highway, listening, her focus shifting from what had been lost to what was arriving. And for the first time since the stop began, there was a subtle change in her stance, not defensive, not reactive, but resolved, like the next moment would no longer belong to uncertainty. Cole followed her gaze instinctively, his posture tightening again as the distant sound grew clearer, and the question he had not asked yet seemed to settle between them, unspoken but unavoidable. Danielle did not rush to fill that silence. She let it sit, let it press against him, the same way the truth had been pressing against the edges of this moment since the beginning. And as the first faint glimmer of headlights appeared far down the road, cutting through the darkness with steady intent, she finally spoke again, her voice low but unmistakably certain. "You stopped the wrong person, but you are about to meet the right ones." The distant headlights grew brighter, sharper, cutting through the darkness with a precision that felt deliberate, controlled, and Danielle Carter did not move as they approached, her posture steady, her gaze fixed forward as the low hum of multiple engines rolled into the rest stop, like a quiet declaration that something larger had just arrived. Officer Ryan Cole straightened instinctively, his earlier hesitation replaced by a rigid alertness. Though the uncertainty had not left him, it had only shifted, deepened, and as the first black SUV pulled in and came to a smooth stop without urgency or chaos, the air itself seemed to change, the flashing red and blue lights now reflecting off a darker, more composed presence. Doors opened in unison, not rushed, not aggressive, but precise, and figures stepped out in dark jackets, their movements calm, coordinated, their eyes scanning the scene with a clarity that made the previous tension feel smaller, less certain. Danielle exhaled slowly, almost imperceptibly, as if a line she had been holding for too long had finally steadied, and she reached into her jacket. Not suddenly, not defensively, but with the same measured control she had carried through every moment of the night, her fingers closing around the badge concealed beneath the fabric. Cole's gaze locked onto that movement, his body tensing for a fraction of a second before the man approaching from the lead vehicle spoke first, his voice firm but controlled, cutting through the space without force. Step back from her, and the authority in it was unmistakable, not louder, not harsher, just absolute. Cole blinked once, caught between instinct and realization, and as Danielle brought the badge into the open, letting the light catch its surface just enough to be seen clearly, the silence that followed was heavier than anything before it. She did not raise her voice, did not change her tone. She simply held the badge where it could not be misunderstood and said, "Danielle Carter, Federal Bureau of Investigation." Each word steady, grounded, leaving no room for doubt. The second officer took a small step back without being told, his earlier uncertainty now replaced by something closer to recognition, while Cole remained still, his eyes fixed on the badge, then on her face, as the pieces of the last few minutes began to rearrange themselves into something he had not considered. The man from the SUV stepped closer, his presence calm but commanding, his attention moving briefly to Cole before returning to Danielle. "Agent Carter, we lost visual on the primary," he said, his tone measured, not accusatory, just factual, and Danielle nodded once, the acknowledgement quiet but clear, her focus already shifting forward, beyond the moment of revelation, toward what came next. The rest stop, once still and empty, now held a different kind of silence, one shaped by understanding rather than assumption. And as Cole finally lowered his hand fully from his radio, his posture no longer certain, but no longer resistant either, the weight of what had just changed settled into the space between them, undeniable and irreversible. The weight of the moment did not break with noise or confrontation. It settled quietly, pressing into every movement, every glance, as Danielle Carter lowered her badge just enough to rest it against her jacket again, not hiding it, not displaying it, simply letting it exist as fact. The agents behind her moved with calm efficiency, speaking in low voices, relaying updates, adjusting positions, their presence controlled and deliberate, and the rest stop no longer felt like a random place on the map. It felt like a point where something important had almost slipped away and something else had taken its place. Officer Ryan Cole stood still, his earlier authority now replaced by something quieter, heavier, his eyes moving from Danielle to the agents and back again, as if trying to understand how the situation had shifted so completely without him seeing it happen. Danielle turned toward him fully now, her expression unchanged, not cold, not harsh, just clear, and for a moment she said nothing, allowing the silence to hold what words did not need to explain. Then she spoke, her voice steady, measured, carrying no anger but no softness either. "You were doing your job," she said, and the statement landed with an unexpected weight, not as reassurance, but as recognition, and she continued after a brief pause. "But you were not seeing the full picture." And that was where it stayed, simple, direct, leaving no room for argument. Cole's jaw tightened slightly, not in defiance, but in realization, the kind that comes too late to change what has already happened, and he nodded once, small, almost imperceptible, as if acknowledging something he could not yet fully put into words. Behind them, one of the agents approached Danielle, his voice low, professional. "We have units moving along the highway. There is still a chance to intercept." And Danielle nodded, her focus shifting instantly from reflection to action, the transition seamless, like she had been waiting for that next step all along. She glanced once more toward the dark stretch of road where the vehicle had disappeared, her eyes narrowing just slightly, not in frustration, but in calculation, already tracing the path forward instead of the mistake behind. The second officer near the trailer stepped back further, giving space. Without being asked, his posture now careful, aware, and the unopened latch on the trailer remained a quiet symbol of what had almost been disrupted. Danielle moved toward her truck, her steps measured, grounded, and as she reached the door she paused, just briefly, turning her head back toward Cole one last time, not to confront, not to accuse, but to leave something behind that did not need to be repeated. "Next time," she said, her voice low, steady. "Look twice before you decide who belongs." "Where?" And the words settled into the space between them, not loud, not dramatic, but lasting. Cole did not respond immediately, his gaze following her as she climbed back into the cab, the engine still quiet, the night still carrying the echo of what had changed. And as the agents began to move again, coordinating their next steps, the flashing lights reflected differently now, not just as authority, but as a reminder that sometimes the truth stands right in front of you, waiting to be seen. The engine came to life with a low, steady rumble, vibrating through the frame of the truck and into Danielle Carter's hands as they rested lightly on the wheel, the sound grounding, familiar, like a return to something constant after a moment that had shifted everything. Outside, the red and blue lights continued to pulse, but they no longer felt directed at her. They reflected off her mirrors, her windows, fading into the background as the agents moved with quiet urgency, their voices low, coordinated, already focused on the next point along the highway where the night was still unfolding. Danielle adjusted her mirrors with a small, precise motion, catching a final reflection of the rest stop behind her, the officers standing still, the SUVs angled in controlled formation, the space no longer tense but changed, marked by what had been revealed. She did not rush, did not accelerate too quickly. She let the truck ease forward, tires rolling slowly over the asphalt, each movement deliberate, controlled, as if the road ahead required the same patience she had carried through every second before this. Officer Ryan Cole remained where he was, his posture no longer rigid with assumption, but quiet, reflective, his gaze following the slow movement of the truck as it passed through the edge of the light and toward the open road. And in that moment, there was no confrontation left, no authority to assert, only the weight of understanding settling into place. Danielle's eyes stayed forward, focused on the dark highway stretching out ahead, the faint glow of distant headlights far beyond, her mind already moving through the next steps, the next coordinates, the next chance to correct what had almost been lost, and the voice in her earpiece returned, steady now, recalibrated. "Units are positioned ahead. You will intercept at mile marker 247. And she gave the slightest nod, more to herself than anyone else, her focus sharpening once again. The truck gained speed gradually, the hum of the engine smoothing into a constant rhythm, the lines of the road sliding beneath her with quiet certainty, and behind her the rest stop receded, its lights growing smaller, softer, until they became just another point in the distance. Inside the cab, the world narrowed to the road, the instruments. The steady pulse of motion, and Danielle's breathing matched it, calm, even, controlled, as if nothing had been shaken, only clarified. Far ahead, the highway curved slightly, disappearing into darkness, but not into uncertainty, not anymore. And as she pressed forward, the reflection of those flashing lights faded completely from her mirrors, leaving only the open road and the quiet, undeniable sense that the night was not over, it had only just begun.